مصلحا ومجددا فارنوا بنظر طاهر وجناني.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah, with us today we have our beloved brother Reza Aslam from the United States living in New York, and today we will hear how he found Islam Ahmadiyya. Assalamu alaikum, dear brother.
Alaikum Aslam, brother Razi. Thank you for having me on. I've watched your work, and it's a very exciting opportunity to finally meet up with you. My name is Reza Aslam. I am a 37-year-old attorney from New York City. I was born and raised in New York City. I am one of 3 children, the oldest in my household. We are a Bengali family. My parents were the first generation immigrants. They came here in 1983. My dad is a vascular surgeon, but he was a student at the time. And my parents were just married when they first came to the United States. When I was born, they were married for only approximately 11 and a half months. They came to the United States with really hopes and dreams like many other immigrant families. And they were a big family. On my mother's side especially, we grew up very close. My mother is one of 10 siblings. I grew up very close to all my uncles and aunts. We were a very matriarchal family. I have 24 first cousins on my mother's side. And when I was born, my entire family lived in the same apartment building. So I was the child who was not just raised by his parents, but I was raised by my entire maternal side of the family. And growing up, Islam was a part of my life. I can't say it was always a living part of my life, but my maternal grandfather was a very devout Muslim. He had opened multiple schools in Bangladesh. He had wrote multiple books in Bengali regarding Islam. And growing up, he was a big part of my life in the sense that you knew if you went to your grandparents' house that we would partake in, practices such as milad or, group meetings where he would often give us sermon. He would share passages from the Quran. He would share stories of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And he would always try to implore these teachings and messages upon his children and his grandchildren. Now, sadly, I can say that he's no longer with us. And looking back, I can't say I took full advantage of everything that he tried to teach us. But, I grew up in New York City. I grew up in Long Island. I had a very affluent background. My father did very well for himself. My parents raised a great family, and they did well for themselves in a worldly sense. And I never lacked anything. They tried to give us, my mother especially, she was born and raised into a Sunni household. She taught us how to read Quran. She prayed 5 times a day. She tried to instill in us the foundation of Islam. She made sure that part of our youth was that we would regularly attend our local Islamic school. And growing up, I did learn the foundations. I learned how to read Arabic. I finished the Quran prior to high school. And I learned how to become, how a Muslim acts. But there was always a sort of disconnect as into there had to be a deeper meaning. There had to be more to it. And I think the conflict started to arise, especially in my teenage years, because I grew up in Western society. I had everything available to me. My parents were, my dad was always working. My mother tried to do the best that she could with her 3 children. But, I had a luxurious life, and with all the cons that come with it, right? And slowly over time, I remember that I started to see a conflict over what Islam would say, or what I believed Islam would say, and what I was seeing in those responsible for my Islamic education. I grew up, regularly attending this mosque in Long Island, and I would see that the people in charge, there was a conflict between what they were telling me and what they were doing. And I never understood it. And it became as if that this mosque wasn't really about Islam per se, but more of a a social clique or a social group where there were the popular people and there were the not so popular people, and there was a social hierarchy, and it was very weird. But this was kind of like your social group. It was primarily Bengali masjid, and these were really your friends. These were your neighbors. But I remember there was one particular moment in, I would say, my early 20s where I was at the masjid one day, and I saw the president and executives of the masjid, and I saw one of their old friends come into the masjid. And I knew that this person had a colorful character. He had done some things that were probably not so great in his past, that were well known, that were publicly well known. And I said, wow, this person is here. And knowing what he had done in the social atmosphere, and knowing that he had, done some wrong things, it shocked me that he had walked in and he was embraced by this administration, who were his friends, but he was embraced like like a returning war hero, that they invited him in, and he was one of the in people, that the imam of this masjid, was smiling and hugging him like he had not seen his brother in many, many years. And I stood there and asked myself, I said, this can't be right. I said, this can't be right. I said, this doesn't make sense. How is it that you come in here and tell me every single day about what I'm doing wrong and try to instill in me a strict Islamic Sharia? And then you make the exception because it benefits you, right? And that really opened my eyes. And it sadly led to a real disenfranchisement with Islam, and for me, shortly thereafter. I said, look, I personally could not be part of a group or a religion that was run by hypocrisy. I would not do it. I said, I could do better. I have a better internal moral conscience than these people, right? Sure, I might have my own flaws, but I know what's right from wrong, and I know who I want to be around and who I don't want to be around. And I certainly don't want to be around this. And it just continued, and I started to sadly see these own things manifest in my own household, where the allure of the worldly success started to really take hold, right? And we slowly started to become a group, a social group that would qualify people based on what they had, by their titles, by their social status, by their economic status. And it no longer mattered about their behaviors or their moral compass or lack thereof. It was more of either you're in or you're not in. And I started to notice that, people who were less socially successful, or let's just put it, who were poor or little lower in the social financial class, they were being treated differently when I was amongst my social circle. And I didn't like that. I said, I grew up in high school full of diversity, right? My best friend growing up was Haitian, right? My other best friends were Caucasian. I had a wide range of friends. Sure, I had my Bengali friends, I had my Pakistani friends, I had my Desi friends, but I also had a very mixed group. And those friends who are not of the Bengali and Pakistani background after 9/11, they were the ones who stood up for me. And I'll never forget that. So I would consider myself a bridge for all social groups, and that was a really important part of my upbringing. So when I started to see that there was a conflict in my mosque, and there was a conflict in my family, I decided, what's a young guy supposed to really do? At that point, you're really depending still on your parents, right? I let go of Islam. I wasn't praying, right? I wasn't fasting. I wasn't given zakat. I identified myself as a Muslim, but it was really in name only. I would pray if my mother reminded me to pray, but it always felt like a burden. It always felt like a tax instead of a pleasing event. And this continued for quite some time. And I would still, at times, if my friends went to prayer, I would go to prayer, but I wasn't really active. And I didn't really seek to have it become an active part of my life. I thought I was doing okay. I was getting through college. I was about to go into grad school. I had gotten married. I got married young, but I got married on, right before I entered into law school. And when I got married, I discovered that my brother-in-law, was an Ahmadi Muslim, right? And he was a very devout Ahmadi Muslim. And now I started to get introduced to this fact that there was a group of Muslims out there who initially was told to me that those are non-Muslims. And the reason why I initially was told to stay away from that group and those people, or to be careful, is because my mother sadly was, she was not comfortable with it. Let's just put it that way. She made it very clear. At one point, she sat down with my father, my wife, and me, and she made it very clear that she would not have an Ahmadi in her household. Now, I really didn't understand what that meant at the time. You know, I was 23, 24 years old. I was living the good Western life. I had my wife, I had my education, I had a cool car. What else could a really young guy need, right? Had some money in my pocket. I was working. I thought I was set. So when she came to me and says that I will not tolerate an Ahmadi in my household, I really shrugged it off and I didn't think much of it. I said, no, I'm not really practicing Islam anyway, so what does it matter if I'm an Ahmadi or a non-Ahmadi, right? But I did note especially of her strict intolerance towards it. And it was one of the few times where I could say that, you know, you're not messing with mom on this, that she is, it's a red line in the sand. There was no discussion about it. There was no, negotiation about it. If I tried to ask her, well, why not, right? It was just because I said so, because I'm your mom. And if you want to live under my roof and be in my household, and these are my rules, and either you're going to adhere to them or you're going to get out. Now, where was I going to go? I didn't have much. I was just starting off my young professional life. I was still a student. So I was like, okay, whatever. But, you know, there's a saying that if you push your kids a certain way and you tell them to stay away from something, it's their nature to go find out what it is. Your parents will warn you 100 times over, don't do this or don't do that, but we still want to experience and see what it's like, right? So that's actually what happened to my wife. My wife, she took my mom's words to heart, and she said, you know what? She clearly has a very strong feeling in opposition to these people. So let me go find out and see what it is that she is against. Who are these people, right? And then my wife started to read, and she started to confer with her brother, and she started to read on her own and do a lot of research on her own. And I started to notice a change in her, that one, she had this excitement that she had, as if she had found something that she had been looking for a long, long time. I specifically remember one day coming home from my internship, and she was reading the introduction to Ahmadiyya, and she wasn't an Ahmadi. She was not a born Ahmadi, right? She kind of been like me a little bit in the sense that religion wasn't a really big part of our life at the time, but we had a good moral compass. We understood the existence of God. It's just we weren't really active. But I remember coming home from this particular day and looking at her and seeing, and she's like quoting to me parts of this book. Now, I admit I wasn't really listening to her because I had all those preordained, ideas in my head that Ahmadis are not good people, right? And you should stay away from them. So when she started to quote these passages in this book, I don't remember what she was saying, but I remember how excited she was. It was as I really hadn't seen her that excited in a long, long time. I thought things like that excitement were reserved for me, but she was celebrating over a book because some long lost question that she didn't even know that she had been answered. And this whole thing started because my mother told us to stay away from Ahmadi Muslims. And it's really ironic how that happened, that my mother, her anti-Ahmadi tendencies were the catalyst to start my wife and I's journey on this path. But when my wife approached me and she had said, look, Reza, look what I found, I wasn't ready. In fact, I became really standoffish. I said, look, you're my wife. I love you, right? But if you're going to go down this path, I'm not going to go with you. I'll do me and you do you, and we'll make it work. And I remember that when she was ready to take bayat, she actually asked me, she said, Reza, I'm going to take the bayat. I'm going to become an Ahmadi Muslim. How do you feel about it? And initially in my head, I was so heartbroken. I was like, what is happening? I said, is she becoming one of those people my mom warned me about? Like, has someone brainwashed her? Has someone like hypnotized her? What's happening? I became really upset. I became really angry. I mean, I'll be honest, I was really angry. And I wasn't angry with her because that's my wife. I love my wife. And I told my wife, I support you. And I saw a wave of relief go through her the second I told her that. That she said, you know what, Reza? If you had not been able to accept me as an Ahmadi Muslim, I don't know what was going to happen to us. So in my outwardly, I told her, I said, look, I support you 100%. Internally, I was really torn. So much so that I was upset with Allah himself. And I said, Allah, you're taking my wife from me? Like, why? What did I do? We're good people. We were living a good life. And now, he's becoming a devout Ahmadi Muslim. Like, what does that mean? And it's funny because at that particular moment, right when she started on this path and I had internalized those feelings, I got very sick. And I'm really a healthy guy. I exercise regularly. I was active in sports. I got really sick, and I got sick for like a while. I was high fever and just bedridden. Like fever wouldn't go away, sweating through my clothes. And 2 weeks later, after this constant sickness, right, I was still mad. I was still mad at Allah. I said, Allah, why'd you take my wife? I said, why? Why'd you take my wife? Like, I felt alone, to be honest. And here I was now watching slowly as my mother-in-law became an Ahmadi Muslim, my father-in-law became an Ahmadi Muslim, and now my wife became an Ahmadi Muslim. And at that time, I said, something had been taken from me. And then I got sick. And I remember I stayed sick for a long time. And one day when I was feeling better, 2 weeks later, my wife said, okay, let's go out. You're feeling a little better, let's go out. And I said, all right, I'm about 80%, let's go out. No fever. So we go out, and all of a sudden, as we're out, the fever comes back, and I get sick again. Sicker than I had been the first time. And I remember driving home, and my wife was driving because I was delirious at that point. And I remember I was looking out the window of my car, and I said, okay, Allah, I'm not mad at you anymore. I understand. So we're okay. And the first thing I had after that was a sense of relief. And guess what happened? I got better. Literally the next day, no more fever, and slowly got better. But it was from that moment where I just said to myself, okay, Allah, you didn't take my wife away from me. There's got to be something to this. I'm not mad at you. Please forgive me. We're okay. We're cool. Right? Me talking to God this way. And I had a sense of relief. I physically got better. But I still was not ready to accept Ahmadiyya. In fact, I remember the first time I walked into an Ahmadi mosque. I walked into an Ahmadi mosque and I had that look on my face of, don't talk to me. I'm not here to talk to anyone. I'm not here to get along with anyone. I'm just here to pick up my wife and go home. She had attended an event, and I was so adamant and so fearful of my mom and what she had instilled in me that I said, you know what? I'll pick you up when the event is over. So she calls me and she goes, well, I'm in the mosque. Can you just come in and pick me up? I'm not going to be able to find you in the crowd. And I remember walking into the mosque and I was mad again. And I had this look that, for lack of better words, it simply said, don't talk to me, don't approach me. And I remember walking into this mosque and everyone was kind of walking around. And I was hoping to just sit in the corner and no one would notice me, collect my wife, and get out of there as quickly as possible. And there was this gentleman who I don't think I've ever seen him again since this time. He was really tall. He was an elderly gentleman. He was wearing all white. He had a pair of sunglasses on. He had a white beard and a white toupee. He was wearing all white. And I walked in. I'm standing by the door, and I have this stern look on my face, like, don't talk to me. Trying to blend in with everyone else. And they're all doing their own thing. Everyone's excited. They are talking amongst themselves. They just finished their program. They're moving in and out of the masjid, right? So surely no one's going to notice this guy sitting in the corner having this look on his face that he's really angry. This gentleman, whose name I never got, comes right up to me, right? And I now that he's standing in front of me, I'm scowling at him. Just really, don't talk to me. Puts his hand out and he says, Assalamu alaikum. And I was like, okay, I'm going to know my manners. So I shake his hand and I say, alaikum assalam, with a very stern face. And he goes, what's your name? And I said, what? He goes, what's your name? So I said, my name is Reza. Because I didn't even want to give him my last name. I said, my name is Reza. And he told me, he goes, I don't know what it is about you, but there's something really good in you, and I hope you find out what it is. And that was it. I never saw him again. And I remember looking at him like, what? I said, internally, I was like, wow, I just spent all this time being really mad, hoping no one would approach me because I looked so mad. And the first thing of any formal introduction with an Ahmadi person was, I see greatness in you and I hope you figure it out. Totally disarmed me on the spot. Still, I was living in an anti-Ahmadi household, and I wasn't even remotely ready to start really finding out what was going on. And it started to really raise some conflicts in my household because my mother, discovering that my wife had, proceeded down this line of gaining religious knowledge, gaining knowledge about Ahmadiyya, about preaching to me, about trying to share what she has experienced to me, right? My mom started to get really, really mad, right? And really generate some hostility towards my wife and I, and constantly warning me, Reza, don't you go there. Reza, don't you do that. Reza, trying to tell me, Reza, come here, Reza, go here. And I would try to acquiesce. I would go to our local mosque events. And I found myself, I was like, this is still not my social circle. I said, no matter how hard my mother may try, I just didn't feel that I ever belonged there. And I didn't feel that because of a religious sense, but I felt that because of the way this social atmosphere was working, that this wasn't Islam. This was just a social group, and I don't belong in the social group for whatever reason. So I kind of just took the neutral ground for the next 3 to 5 years, and I said, you know what? Everyone do their own thing. I'm going to do my thing, and we're going to find a way to make it work. And it really didn't work. It caused a lot of conflict in my family. It caused a lot of conflict in my marriage, and we could never really pinpoint it because we'd always get to a point where you agree, and then there's a stark difference, and no matter what, we could not bridge that gap. And we couldn't bridge that gap, not because of my wife's lack of trying, but I couldn't bridge that gap because my heart was closed. I did not want this. I had been raised in a household where Ahmadis were wrong, not even understanding what they believed in, but I knew that I was raised that they're wrong. And I was threatened that they're so wrong that if you go there, you're going to lose your entire way of life. You're going to lose living in the big house. You're going to lose the support. You're going to lose the love and admiration of your family, of your friends. You're going to lose it all if you go there. So it wasn't happening. And even amongst my Pakistani friends growing up, when I would tell them that, look, my wife has become Ahmadi, and, I'm kind of, just hanging out in that general environment, they would get mad. They would say, yo, you come hang out with us, we'll make you Sunni again real fast. I said, what does that mean? I said, guys, when we hang out, it's not like we're doing the best Islamic things. We're doing everything that a Western boy would do. Like, we're not really practicing Islam. We're not hanging out talking about religious theology or praying to God collectively or studying the ways of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We're not doing any of that. But, I didn't want to lose my circle, right? And I saw every single time I brought it up to my family or to my friends, it was just pushback. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be Switzerland. I'm going to be the middle guy. But I slowly started to see people changing towards me and trying really, really hard to instill in me and ingrain in me their, anti-Ahmadi beliefs and show a general fear of losing me, right? My friends would tell me that, come hang out with us. We will re-indoctrinate you. We will show you how wrong you are, and you can go educate your wife, right? But, when we would hang out, we wouldn't really talk about those things, right? So this went on for quite some time. And then I finished grad school, and Ahmadiyya was introduced to me, and I actually met our Huzur, our Khalifa, during my graduate school career. And even that story was very special. So my family, my in-laws now, who are now all converts, with me being the last holdout, the Huzur had come to the United States to visit. I think it was 2016. I might be wrong, but he had come to visit. He was in national headquarters in Silver Springs, and they had obtained their first Mulakat appointment, and they were very excited. And I was there studying very vivaciously for my final exams. And in law school, you only get one final exam for the whole final grade, so you can't screw it up. So you're studying, for weeks and weeks and weeks at end. Even a slacker like me, there's no end to studying and memorizing all this material. The day of their mulaqat, they are leaving New York to head to Silver Springs, Maryland, which is about a 4.5-hour drive. And their mulaqat is at 11 a.m. So they're little tense. They're leaving around 5 a.m., 5 to 6 a.m. right after Fajr. And they're really stressed. They're really stressed because they're driving a long way. There's some anxiety and excitement and all that. And I'm watching them as I'm reading my outlines and all this information to prepare for my final exam. I'm watching them and I see them start to get so stressed out that they start to kind of argue amongst each other. And I had made clear, I'm not going. I'm going to stay home and study for my finals for this weekend. And my wife was going to take the car and drive her parents, and they were all going to go see Huzur, see the Khalifa. I was not going. I made that abundantly clear. My wife tried, and I made it clear for weeks on end, I'm not going. I have no desire to meet this man. What could he possibly say to me? Growing up, my mom had taken me to peers and to these quote unquote fortune tellers, right? Which I just realized those were all, false. I realized that when I went to one of them for the first time, I said, this guy didn't tell me anything about Islam or about myself or anything. So I made the wrongful assumption that, who is this gentleman that you're claiming is the Khalifa or calling Huzur? Like, who is he, right? So the morning of when they're leaving, I see how stressed out they are. And I remember them saying, you know what? I overheard one of them saying, you know what? I'm not going anymore. That's when I closed my book and I said, you know what? Everyone get in the car. My wife looked like, what? I said, look, you're all not going to go because you're all arguing right now about who's going to drive and how you're going to get there. And I said, enough. I will drive all of you. Just get in the car and let's go. I spent 4 hours driving to Maryland, really angry that I'm going to see a man that I have no desire to see, who probably has nothing to tell me, and I'm missing out on my studies. So I was really upset. Now at that time, I was a lot bigger. I was a big time power lifter. So in my silent protest form, I wore the tightest muscle t-shirt I could find and a pair of jeans, because whoever this man is, he's going to see that I'm a big guy, right? So I spent the whole drive just internally, quietly saying to myself, why am I going? Mad that I was being forced to go, mad that I was being forced to drive. I wasn't taking any solace in the fact that I was doing a good thing for my family. I was mad that they were making, that they could not go themselves. And I was mad I was being put in this situation. Nonetheless, we arrive and we're waiting outside the office. And still, I'm just quietly kind of brooding to myself, why am I here? What am I doing here? Like, can we just get this over with and go? I don't want to meet this gentleman. What is he possibly going to say to me? What could he possibly offer me, right? Again, just how I was when I walked into that mosque the first time, I was hostile. I had the look of hostility all over my face. I didn't even know who he was. So we get in and we're in this office. So I sit in the front row, and my two, they were babies at the time, my two baby niece and nephew, they're like flanking me because they're excited to see their Khalifa. And they're trying to tell me and instill me like, you know who you're going to meet? You know who you're going to meet? And I said, oh, I don't know. All right, fine. I'm here. It's all good. So I'm sitting there and I'm in my t-shirt and, guns out, right? And Huzur comes in, right? And Huzur sits at the desk opposite from me. So now there's Huzur, there's a desk between us, and there's me in the front row looking at him like, okay, what are you going to tell me? And I'll never forget the first thing he ever told me. He looks right at me and he goes, and I'm mad that I'm there and scowling at him. He goes, so you work out? And I was like, excuse me? And he laughs and he raises his arms. He goes, you look like you work out. You look like you exercise. And the first thing I did was laugh. I spent 4 hours being angry that I had to go see this gentleman, the Khalifa. And the first thing he did was make me laugh. He disarmed me on the spot. Weeks of hostility, hours of anger. He disarmed me on the spot. And I was like, okay, we're cool. That was my first really mental reaction when I met the Khalifa. I was like, all right, we're cool. I have no problem with you. I spent all this time being mad at you and coming down here and having to be forced to see you and really not understanding who you are. But hey, we're cool. You know what? I have no problem. So I enjoyed the rest of that mulaqat, really not understanding the enormity of being in his presence and the enormity of that event. But I just thought I was hanging out with a very cool, nice spiritual man who commented on whether I exercised and made a joke of it and really disarmed me on the spot. Still, I was not ready to join Ahmadiyya. And when my parents found out that I went to go see the Khalifa, they flipped. My mom flipped. She was so mad. We were no longer living in her household at that point, but she was so mad. And she started to say a lot of negative things about my in-laws, about my wife, and just things that were very sad and very painful, right? That, how I was becoming brainwashed, things like that. And I kept to always tell her, I was like, Mom, no one is brainwashing me. No one's trying to convince me. I try to kind of calm her down and say, Mom, whenever they try to tell me something, like, don't worry, I'm still your son. No one is going to be able to convince me or hypnotize me or, make me think something wrong. Like, I can tell what's right and wrong. I have my own character. You raised a good son. You raised a smart son. I'm a smart guy. No one is going to be able to tell me something wrong and prove it to me as right. So don't worry. I got this, Mom. But still, I could see the fears raising in her, and I didn't understand why. Finally, I opened my own business a few years later, first year out of grad school, and it was a fresh, brand new business. And I remember my wife went to her first Jalsa, East Coast Jalsa, and she said, Reza, come to Jalsa. And I said, no, I'm not going to Jalsa. I have work to do. Right. So first I had schoolwork at one point, and then I didn't want to go. And now here I was done with school, and I was like, I have a career now. I said, no, I have work to do. I'm not going to go. Right. I even asked my mom, I said, Mom, do you think I should go to this? And she got so mad. She said, no, don't go there. Stay home, do your work. I said, okay. So I told my wife, I said, look, I'm not going to go. And they actually went without me. And then she called me when she was there, and she goes, Rez, it's a really cool place. There's a lot of people here. Your business is brand new. So why don't you grab some flyers, put on a suit, get some business cards, and come down here and network and grow your business. So I said, okay, well, that makes sense. If I can go there and it's work and I'm networking and it's about getting clients and meeting new people and putting my face out there, sure, no problem. So I get all my flyers from my new law firm. I get my business cards. I put on my suit and I drive all the way to Harrison, Pennsylvania, not really recognizing this is Jalsa, but recognize that, there's going to be a lot of people there that I want to meet, right? Let me let them know about my new business. I get there, and I realize that this is not really a business seminar. In fact, it's the furthest thing from. And this is not probably the best place for me to advertise. So initially, I got kind of upset, right? But I couldn't really express my frustration to my wife. She was in the women's section. But my nephew, Reza Aslam Rabbi's son, who is also in Jamia, and I'm very proud of him. He was so little, he kind of kept me company, right? So now I had a bag full of flyers, and I was dressed in a suit. So I put all that aside, and I said, all right, I'm here. Might as well, do something. And I remember going to my Jalsa, and the first thing I remember is, one, there's a big, comfortable carpet. Everyone is sitting on a big, comfortable carpet, and there's a lot of people here, and this is really comfortable. And there's sermons going on and recitation going on. But I was like, okay, I'm not really interested in all that. But what I specifically remember is there's a surge of positive feelings and positive energy in this room. And for my first Jalsa, all I did was sit in the back of the event hall, lay out on the carpet, and literally just take in the positive energy. I was like, you know what? I've never felt this before. I've never been in a place where it was my first religious convention of any kind ever. And I said, there's some really good vibes here, and everyone's being really friendly. And, my little nephew is kind of like, oh, this is my uncle, he married my aunt, this is introducing me to everyone. And everyone was really friendly to me. And I was no longer had that hostility. I was smiling and shaking a lot of hands and telling everyone like, hey, I just opened a business. But they're like, okay, that's nice. Thanks for coming to Jalsa. But I realized it's left such an impression on me for such a long time that the positive vibes, that I could feel it into my bones, that this is not the same as everything else. There's something really positive here. And I also started to notice that the way people used to greet each other, that Jalsa was staffed by volunteers, and they're all smiling. But they're all working, and they're working for nothing. There were no contractors. There was no paid staff. I went to the bathroom, and there was a man cleaning it, and he's smiling as he's mopping the bathroom floor. So I asked him, I said, so where are you from? He says, "Oh, I'm a doctor from some state down south." And I said to myself, I was like, wow, there's a doctor cleaning the bathroom, smiling ear to ear because that's his service. And I said, this is not the same. This is not like those mosques where I've been with all their social hierarchies. This is not the same, where people of all different kinds, of all different colors, of all different creeds, they're embracing themselves like real brothers. And the only thing that they had in common was Islam Ahmadiyya. And I took note of that right away. I said, okay, this is a place where everybody gets along. This is a place where everyone's accepted. I want to hang out with these people. After my first Jalsa, I started to attend the mosque, right? It still had to pull me along, but I would go. I showed a little bit more enthusiasm. I wasn't really interested in the theological knowledge part of it, but I just wanted to be around good people, right? I wanted to be around that sense of brotherhood. I wanted that unity, right? And this was the first place I had actually seen it. And there were no strings. There was no guy coming around with a basket asking me for donations. That really bothered me in the old mosques, that there was always a bucket going around for people to put money in, and auctions and recognition, that if you gave a lot of money to the mosque, that you were a special person and get special recognition. There was none of that. In fact, someone even told me that, Reza, you're our guest. You come eat with us, we'll take care of you. You come along with us, we'll provide you room and board. You are our guest. And so much so that I learned that all Jamaat activities, all Ahmadiyya movement activities are funded by the members. And I said, wait, really? They're like, yeah, there's no outside money. There's no city grants. There's no state grants. There's none of that here. We're friendly with all our municipalities and local authorities and political figures, but we're not in it for the money. We're just here to raise awareness for true Islam. And that was such a big deal to me. I was like, okay, you're not doing it for the money. You're generally doing it for the people, for each other. And that became amazing. And over the next couple of years, I just started to delve into it more and more and more, but always holding my ground that, I'm not an Ahmadi, but I want to be amongst Ahmadis. So I was like the house guest who never went away. It took another 3 years, I would say 3 years after my first Jalsa, right, where I would now go to Jalsa regularly as a non-Ahmadi, as a guest, just to go sit and kind of just be amongst them and start listening to the speeches, start listening to the sermon, and it was really something. And I was really like slowly just becoming enlightened, and my heart began to soften. And I started to see that, the things that I saw outside and the things in the other mosques, it was two sides of a coin. This was not the same. So I would dedicate myself that if I was going to go pray, I was going to pray with these people. And I was going to, go celebrate Eid, I was going to celebrate with these people. If I was going to fast during Ramadan, I was going to fast with these people. And I was literally just attending all the events, and so much so that people totally forgot or didn't recognize that I'm not an Ahmadi, but I had already made friends. I had already made brothers. I had already made people that I could call upon, who were there for me, who would want to hang out with me. And they, guess what? They were just normal. They weren't, brainwashing cultists like my mom led me to believe. They were just normal people. These were normal young guys just like me, trying to make it through in this world, except they had Islam Ahmadiyya and I didn't. And not a single time did any of these friends that I made ever try to instill me like, Reza, you really should join. Or Reza, you're taking advantage of all these things, of all these events. You should really give something back. Or because you're attending all these events that you owe us something. That never happened. It was literally like, sir, you can stay as long as you want. You are welcome amongst us, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from. So keep coming. All they really asked me for was my presence. And that was really cool. And, I'm like a bull in a china shop type personality. And there was even a place for my type of personality here. And no one was judging. No one was upset. No one ever told me to calm it down. No one ever made me feel different. No one ever alienated me. But while I was seeing all these things, the rhetoric outside, especially amongst my family, continued to increase. And I started to lose friends. And I started to see some of my friends distance themselves from me. And it became a little sad. I started to give up some of the bad habits that I had during my younger, wilder days, and slowly reform myself, not for Islam Ahmadiyya, but just for myself, because I wanted to be better. I wanted to, you know, earn my place amongst my new friends and show them that I'm a good person too. And then finally, I remember a few things happened. I was constantly praying. I said, okay, God, I recognize that these Ahmadi Muslims, they're doing everything the right way. I believe in the social part of it, without a doubt. This is the right place to be. But show me a theological sign. I need you to answer that question for me, right? And for years, no sign, no moment came, right? And then one day, during a Jalsa, it was the last day of Jalsa, and I used to make a point that, you know what, I want to be in the front line for Jalsa prayer. And as I'm standing there, people are kind of taking notice that this guy is holding down his spot. He wants to be in the front. So my brother-in-law, Mirza Rabbi, he comes to one of his friends who's standing next to me. He says, this is my brother-in-law, Reza Aslam. He's 99% Ahmadi. And when he said that, I don't think I've ever told Mirza Rabbi this, but when he said that, in my head, I was like, you don't do anything 99%. Why are you doing this 99%? And that stuck with me. That shook me. I was like, I do everything 110%. I am an all or nothing guy. For someone to say that I'm only doing something 99%, that means something is wrong. I'm not doing it right. And I never told him, but that really, really stuck to me for a long time. I continued to pray, continued to pray, continued to pray. And then even as the hostilities were happening around me, I was slowly faced with just one obstacle at this point. I was okay with losing friends. I was okay with losing the old mosque social circles. I was okay with all of that. I was still scared of my parents. And I understand now that, my fear was misplaced, but I was extremely fearful of them, right? That what are my parents going to think, and what am I going to lose, right? I don't want to lose my parents. And finally, I went to an amusement park, and I'm the type of guy at the amusement park that I'm not leaving until you kick me out. I'm going to go on the rides over and over and over again. And one of the rides, I'm definitely sure he gave me a slight concussion. So now the man of steel who doesn't want to give up going on the rides has a slight concussion, and I drove everybody there. So I decided we're gonna take everyone for dinner. So we're sitting at dinner in this big fancy restaurant with everyone there, right? And everyone's exhausted, and they're kind of making comments of how Reza kept going on the rides and all that. But this headache, this awful headache I have, is not going away, and I'm getting more and more nauseous. And I couldn't tell anyone, but I was getting really sick, and I was like, man, I'm gonna get sick here in front of everybody. So I'm sitting there, I'm trying to hold it down, trying to get better, right? And I started gauging. I was like, yo, how far is the bathroom? Am I going to make it there before I get sick? Or am I really going to make a scene of myself in front of all these people in this well-to-do establishment? And I was on the verge of losing it. I swear, I'll never forget that moment. I put my head down, I closed my eyes, and I said, God, please give me relief. And in that one moment, I saw the promised Messiah Islam's face as clear as day. Like his face just came to me, and I saw his face, and like a light switch, I was fine. My head popped up, smiling ear to ear, and I was fine. I went from a guy who was on the verge of getting extremely sick to eating 3 plates of food. And I knew then and there, that moment, that was my response. That it might be abstract, it might be really, sound funny to some people, and that, the guy went on a bunch of roller coasters, he got sick, and then Prophet ﷺ came and helped him out. But that's exactly what happened. In my urgent time of need, Prophet ﷺ's face came to me, and I knew on the spot that this was the right thing. And I made the intention then and there. I said, you know what, I'm going to take bayat. And I don't know when. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to find out what that form says, but I'm going to, get there. And then I told one of my colleagues who was working for me, who was Ahmadi, and I said, look, can you bring me the form? I want to read it. And he says, are you going to sign? And I said, no, I'm not ready to sign yet. I just want to read it. He goes, I'll bring it to you. He goes, but remember, life is short. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. So, read it soon. didn't really ask me to sign it, but he said read it soon. So I made up my mind the next day that I was going to take bayat. I was going to try to make some time in my schedule to go take bayat. And as I'm coming to the front of my office, one of the well-known members in front of our mosque, I didn't even know him, but he was from the Ahmadi mosque. He was in front of my office, and I said, excuse me. I said, you're from the Ahmadi masjid? And he goes, yes. I said, could you do me a favor? Are you busy right now? And he said, no. I said, I don't know why you're here when I'm coming to work, but it's a great coincidence. Can you go get me a bayat form? I'm ready to take bayat. And he says, really? I said, yes, I'm ready. He dropped everything. And his name was Ahmed Mubarak. And he dropped everything and he went to the masjid and he came back to my office with the form and he sat down with me for the entire afternoon. And I said, I'm ready, I'm sure. And he just smiled at me sitting across from my desk. He's probably thinking that, oh, I'm going to have to teach him something or I'm going to say something or just help him, dissuade his fears. I said, no, I'm sure. I signed the bayat in my office and that was it. And it was just relief. It was just relief that, you know what? There was nothing really to be scared about. There was nothing really to fear. There was nothing to be mad at. All this rhetoric that we hear outside that these are not real Muslims, that they practice differently, that they pray differently, that they believe in some crazy ideas, it's all wrong. It's all misinformation spread out there by mullahs and scholars and people who are generally scared. And the reality is that, you know what, I'm an educated guy and I'm a really stubborn guy. So for me to make this journey, it wasn't easy. It took years of my loved ones trying to instill in me and make an impression on me, but I had to do it by myself. And I'm happy to say that no one pushed me, no one forced me. It was the greatest journey that I have ever taken in my life. And it came with challenges. And yeah, after it happened, sure, I didn't talk to my parents for quite some time. Things became distant. And there are still some family members who we still remain distant, and that's okay. Because I know without a doubt that, this is where I belong. And it's been the greatest thing ever. My friends, my best friends, who are now my brothers, who I love more than my own blood, are from my mosque, right? My best friend, who I consider in the whole world, is our regional Murabbi. And, these people changed my life. And in all the time since I've taken bayat and all the challenges that I've faced and all the things that I've done that were probably not the best and all the missteps I've made, they were all there for me. They've saved my family, they've saved me, and they made it through. And the only thing that we had in common was our faith. And that, I look back on it now and I was like, I had family for years who they were never there for me like this, and they would never act like this. But my Ahmadi brothers and sisters, when I needed them, right, and I had nothing to offer them, they were patient with me. They were there for me. They gave me that brotherhood, that family. And, now here I am sharing my story with you as the guy who grew up in an anti-Ahmadiyya household, who through his own way, after years of stubbornness, just found his way. And I don't know what to call it. And I know everyone's going to have their own journey, but really what they tell you out there that's wrong, and all the persecution you face and all the fears of losing everyone, it's really just worldly fears. And when you come to the end of this journey, as I've seen, there's nothing to be scared of. Allah takes care of everything, right? And I've had the opportunity to serve by my huzur and see him multiple times, and even get called out by him in a crowded room where he's recognized me. And there's nothing else that I could say that I really need in a worldly sense, right? I've dedicated my life to this. I think about this every single step of every single day, and I'm just forever grateful. So I really thank Ahmadi Answers and Brother Razi for the opportunity to kind of say my story, and I hope that anyone out there can find some solace or some guidance in it.
MashaAllah, Brother Reza Aslam, one of the best convert stories I've heard. Alhamdulillah, we're at 89 stories now, and this one was really special. I'm sure that the audience will really enjoy and learn from this. And there's many anti-Ahmadis who watch them, and also those Muslims who are struggling and they want to convert, but they need that final step. And I feel that your story can really help them, if Allah wills. Brother Reza, Jazakallah for your time. I just want to ask you one quick question. If you can give some advice to those Muslims who want to become Ahmadi, but they also have family which is against Jamaat. I got an email just 2 days ago from a brother that his wife is actually anti-Ahmadi and he wants to convert. So if you can just give such people some advice because you've been through this. So what would you tell them? What steps should they take?
So I know it's really hard, right? And it was hard for me, and I'm sure it's hard for many of you, but you have to have faith in Allah. Allah will provide everything. And as a logical point, I'll say this. This is how I broke it down. I was really scared of my parents, especially my mother. And then it comes down to it that ultimately I realized was the biggest shirk, right? That if you are so scared of losing someone that close to you, it's still a worldly fear, no matter who it is, right? At the end of the day, ask yourself this: who do I fear the most in this world? And who do I love the most? Do I love Allah or do I love whoever it may be, right? And when you realize that, you know what, there is no one more than I fear and love more than Allah, that's all the answer you need. It is scary, but it is still shirk. And I implore you to have that bravery and to take that step. And you'll see, yes, there'll be trials without a doubt, but Allah will provide everything. And at the end of the day, that's really all you need, because we're all His humble servants. So don't misplace your fears. Whatever worldly fear you may have, Allah will give you the patience, perseverance, and steadfastness to overcome it. Fear Allah first. And if you have that question in your heart, generally ask Him in your prayer. Because if the only thing I found that was holding me back is that I was too scared to genuinely ask Allah, Allah, is this the right way? Is this the right move? And I was holding myself back because I knew that if I genuinely asked Him, that the answer would come as clear as day. So don't be scared of any worldly relationship, no matter who it may be. Your relationship with Allah is first and foremost. He is your mother. He is your father. He is your everything. He is your provider. He is your best friend and sole protector. Trust in Him fully and watch. Every obstacle you have after that will fall and everything will be okay.
Jazakallah, brother, really important advice, and we pray for all the non-Ahmadi Muslim viewers that Allah the Almighty guides them to the true Islam Ahmadiyyat as well. Brother Reza, Jazakallah for your time today. We pray that Allah the Almighty blesses you and your family. And once again, we thank you for giving us time today and sharing this wonderful story. Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. If you have not yet subscribed, make sure to subscribe and click on the bell icon so you can get notifications for every new video. Also make sure to like and comment on the video and follow on Twitter and Instagram.
سفينا صل على محمد